We're good? Okay, I'm going to call the TCHC public session to order, and I'll say good morning. My name is Adele Imrie, and I'm the chair of the board of the Toronto Community Housing Corporation Board of Directors. Today is a hybrid meeting, and it will take place in Committee Room 1 at City Hall, as well as via WebEx. And we are live streaming today on YouTube. I would like to begin with acknowledgement that the land we all sit on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. I would like to move on to my comments, and I have some good news today. The last time we were together, we talked about how excited everyone at TCHC was about this year's United Way campaign. TCHC staff are well known for having very big hearts and even bigger donations when it's time to support the community. So we have very high expectations for the campaign. And I just wanted to give you some highlights from their fundraising to date. So 550 staff members came out to the TCHC Summer Barbecue, which with the support of QP Local 416, raised over $10,000. TCHC had the largest team in the City of Toronto's 5K Civic Run and took the title of the top fundraising team for the third year in a row. Our online auction of donated prizes and experiences raised over $5,000. In November, we put a TCHC stamp on the city's Civic Gala in November with a joint planning committee of city and TCHC staff. On November 10th, 18 TCHC staff did the CN Tower climb, raising over $7,000 in their efforts, and some of the times were absolutely amazing. Couldn't do it myself, certainly. Lastly, Facilities Management held their annual golf tournament, raising over $48,000. So every dollar raised for this campaign supports the network of over 300 agencies and 600 programs in the GTA, including within our own TCHC communities, to help support folks, including our tenants who are dealing with challenges of poverty. I'm very proud of the TCHC team for the way they've always come together for a good cause, and I want to thank everyone who helped raise these funds and organize these events. I know there's a lot of people that are involved. The campaign is still ongoing, so the grand total raised has not been determined. It will be revealed in the new year with great fanfare and with awards. Thanks to the amazing Danielle Duty, who will organize the campaign closing event. So I just ask you to stay tuned and we'll announce the final fundraising amounts. So congratulations to everyone. Thank you. My next good news story is from the ONFA Awards. So there's great news. TCHC is also leading the way, not just in charitable fundraising, but in the ONFA Awards. So last month, a number of TCHC staff and tenants attended the Ontario Not-for-Profit Association annual conference in Ottawa. And Sean was part of the opening plenary session discussing the top issues for housing providers across the province. And TCHC was also nominated for a number of awards. ONFA recognized the efforts of TCHC staff and tenants with 3 different awards, all highlighting the organization's leadership and innovation. So my understanding is we won 3 out of the 4 awards.
We did very well. Which is quite impressive.
And it also, with having Sean participate, it raises the profile of TCHC, and I think that that's really important. So the first award was the Birchmount Community Action Council, is a group of engaged tenants in our East region who are recognized for their community garden initiative and a vibrant social network. The second one was Trevon Douglas, who's a young man working in our Lawrence Heights community and was celebrated for his support of that community, raising money to fund youth and family programs. And lastly, our Next Surgeon program, which is delivered in partnership with the University of Toronto, Ethicon, and Unity Health Toronto. The Next Surgeon team was honored for its innovative approach to programming. And these awards were also highlighted in our latest issue of On Board. I got mine yesterday, so I'm hoping that everyone else got theirs. And there are videos in there, and I hope that everyone takes the time to watch the videos. It gives you more information on these 3 awards and certainly the deserving recipients. And I have to say they're very inspiring. The On Board also has a number of other good news stories that relate to articles about the Life Service Awards, TCHC staff, the opening of 175 Oak Street, which I think the mayor attended with Sean and other staff members at TCHC, and also spotlights one of our amazing tenants, Ms. Bada. And so I would ask that you take the time to read the email, and it is very inspiring. Before we move on, I would like to show you one of those videos, and it's the program award for the Next Surgeon program. So I will ask someone to turn down the lights and set up the movie. See, all you have to do is ask. Where's the popcorn?
Hello, I'm Andrew McKenzie, Director of Operations here at ONFA, and I'm excited to introduce the winner of the 2024 ONFA Innovation Award. This award recognizes ONFA housing members who address an operational, environmental, or community challenge with imagination and insight. This year's award winner addresses current housing challenges while paving the way for a brighter future. Now let's find out who this year's winner is.
We are thrilled to present the 2024 ONFA Innovation Award to the Next Surgeon program at Toronto Community Housing. Launched in 2022, this groundbreaking mentorship program is offered to high school tenants from visible minority groups at Toronto Community Housing who aspire to careers in medicine and surgery. In partnership with St. Michael's Hospital, the University of Toronto, Ethicon, and Unity Health Toronto, this program provides an immersive experience that empowers young people living in community housing to envision a future as doctors and surgeons. Through mentorship, networking, and practical workshops in real hospital settings, participants gain invaluable exposure to the medical field. As the first program of its kind in Canada, the Next Surgeon initiative gives young people of color living in community housing the opportunity to connect with the nation's top medical professionals. This includes direct mentorship from the division head of cardiac surgery at St. Michael's Hospital. The Next Surgeon program seeks to break down the systemic barriers that often stand in the way of young people from marginalized communities, including lack of access, opportunity, and mentorship. By opening doors for these aspiring medical professionals, this initiative is making dreams attainable and transforming lives.
It may surprise you to know that amongst the 250 heart surgeons in Canada, not a single one is Black. Toronto Community Housing, through their Next Surgeon program, is addressing this critical unmet need in our society. We bring students from the Toronto Community Housing Network. We bring them into the hospital. We provide mentorship. We provide education. And they get hands-on experience sewing in a simulation model. They get to say, yeah, this is something that we can do. This program is going to be instrumental for the kids. It's going to change the trajectory of their families. And Canadian society is going to benefit because we're the beneficiaries of their creativity, their energy, and their ideas.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank ONFA for this prestigious award. I would also like to express my profound appreciation to our partners, volunteers, and supporters. This would not have been possible without you. Special thanks goes out to Dr. Bobby Yanagawa, Dr. Lina Alfaki, and Aka Wakobi, and our partners, University of Toronto's Emery Faculty of Medicine Office of Access and Outreach, Upsurge, Unity Health Toronto, Team Neurosurgery led by Dr. Nir Lipsman, and Team Emergency Medicine led by Dr. Garrett Mock. Programs like the Next Surgeon are not just beneficial, they are essential for addressing the health disparities that exist in communities. Youth residing in Toronto community housing provides valuable perspectives that can drive meaningful change. Their first-hand experiences can enrich the healthcare landscape and ensure that the voices of those most affected by health disparities are heard and considered. To conclude, I would like to express again my sincere appreciation to ONFA for awarding TCHC the 2024 Innovation Award for the Next Surgeon. This recognition not only validates our commitment to collaboration, but also motivates us to continue to create spaces where creativity and curiosity can thrive.
On behalf of ONFA, I'd like to thank Toronto Community Housing for the incredible work they're doing and offer our congratulations on this well-deserved award.
So you certainly can see there's some amazing things that go on at TCHC, and I'm actually very proud to be able to highlight some of them. And I hope we continue to do this at the board meetings. And I do recommend that you take the time to see the other two videos because they're equally impressive. And I'm not sure, Ada, who in your group does the onboard email, but I would like you to share our thanks for doing it. And it's important for the board to hear about these things. So thank you. So we'll move on to the agenda. And today we have the 2025 capital and operating budgets for approval. And I know that there's a lot of work that goes into preparing the budget. It takes a lot of time and effort from a number of people. And so on behalf of the board, I would like to thank all those that are involved in this final presentation of the 2025 budget. And certainly your efforts are greatly appreciated by the board. I'd also like to thank Sean and Lily for their leadership in taking us through this process. Sean's almost completed his first budget cycle, and Lily is old hat at this. This is cycle number 2 for Lily. So thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. I don't know if it's easier the second time around, Lily, but we do appreciate the effort. I would also like to thank the city. And although the TCHC did not get everything that we asked for, the city has shown great support and confidence in TCHC, and that is certainly greatly appreciated. And we will certainly work to ensure that the funds are spent wisely and in support of our tenants. I wanted to do this at the end, but I think I'm wise to do it at the beginning. I also wanted to wish everyone happy holidays. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season and enjoys time with family and loved ones. And we will see you in the new year. I didn't want to wait till the end of the meeting because I know that not everyone chooses to stay to the end of the meeting. So I wanted to make sure I got that out at the beginning. So I wish everyone a happy holidays. And now we will move on to the agenda, and I will ask if there are any additions or deletions to today's public agenda. Okay, hearing none, can I ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to the items on today's agenda? Vanita? Item number 8. You have a conflict? Item number 8, okay.
So just when we get to that item on the agenda, if you can leave the room and not take part in the...
Okay. We'll see if it gets pulled. Okay, and...
Just that everybody use microphones.
Yeah. Oh, okay, can you hear me, Kathy? Oh, okay. So we'll sit further forward. Yeah. Okay, so we are holding item number 6 for presentation. We are holding item 7, 11C, 11D, and 12B, as we've got deputations on those items. And we are also holding 11A as there are some changes to our meeting dates. So could I ask if there are any other items that board members would like to hold? John?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to hold number 8.
Number 8, okay, so you, and is that it, John? That's it? Are there any other items that anyone would like to hold? I would like to hold 11A. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda with the, oh, sorry, it's 10A. I'm sorry. 10A, thank you. So we are holding items 6, 7, 11C, D, 12B, 11A, 10A, and 8. It's not a very good order, but it's just the way they're noted on the page. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Vanita. And can I have a seconder? John, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So we will move to item number 6. And I will turn this over to Sean and Lily.
So through the chair, good morning and thank you, everyone. I also want to comment on the significant efforts that have gone into building out our 2025 budget. So I just want to start by acknowledging a lot of the work that's gone into this. So our team throughout the different divisions, as well as led by our financial team, has put a lot of effort into this. In particular, I want to thank also the city. So the city finance team through Steve Conforti, Althea Hutchinson, Anthony Ng, Evan Choi, Marco Petrovsky, as well as our partners in the Housing Secretariat, our service manager, that includes Abby Bond, Warren Daniels, and Doug Rollins. And then internally within our own finance team, folks have worked tirelessly to support the development of this budget. So I specifically want to thank Elizabeth Gersick, Iris Lau, Jeffrey Imran, Edward Chen, Raj Atma, Grace Liu, Claudio Dinatoris, Farah Mohammed, and then additional support from our strategic planning and stakeholder relations team through Ada Wong and Kate Sargent. We are going to be presenting a consolidated and balanced budget that represents consistent and continued essential frontline housing and supports for low-income and equity-deserving tenants. And our work has been informed by the Strategic Financial Sustainability Report done in 2023, with noted significant and unprecedented challenges, being intentional in alignment to maintain the current service levels and incorporate the recommendations from this report. You will also see the highest priority tenant issues such as safety and security and tenant supports being considered, along with the need to continue to maintain our aging building stock. Excuse me. So with that, I'm going to get into reviewing the presentation. So I'm going to go to part 1, the budget directives and planning context, and then just to the next slide where we talk about the city budget directives. So the City of Toronto continues to operate in a challenging budget environment. There are a number of pressures on the overall city budget, including right here at Toronto Community Housing. And so the directives that have come out from the city is to try to maintain minimal budget increases across all city divisions, and that includes agencies, boards, and corporations. However, we were also advised that in the areas of housing, that there would be consideration for additional investments. So you'll see as we go through the budget here that we have made requests for additional investments and new investments within Toronto Community Housing. I'm going to go to the next slide where we talk about our areas of focus. So here, this talks about the way in which we go about doing the budget here at Toronto Community Housing. So the first point talks about our multi-year planning and aligning with the city's planning assumptions. So there's a tremendous number of assumptions that go into a budget like this and how it gets aligned with city finance. The second one talks about driver-based planning. So looking at our budget from the perspective of what are our pressures, what are the things that are driving increases, whether on the cost side or the revenue side of our budget, and we've identified those. The third area talks about business cases. So wherever we're seeking to make additional investments, those are accompanied by a robust business case that looks at the impacts of doing so the costs and benefits of those investments. And those business cases have been reviewed by our executive team here at Toronto Community Housing, and they've also been vetted with the city financial team to ensure that we've identified all the potential issues associated with those investments. And then just very quickly on the right-hand side, some of the other really key issues that we have to consider when looking at the budget, our relationship with Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. Again, I'll remind folks that TCHC continues to be the owner of the assets, and we have to make sure that we are properly maintaining those assets while they're being operated by Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. So while the two organizations do submit separate budgets to the city, our budget in particular needs to make sure that it's well aligned with the needs of Toronto Seniors Housing. The second item on state of good repair, I've got a whole slide on that, so we'll talk about that in quite a bit of detail, but it's a major driver to the capital budget within TCHC. We'll talk a little bit more about the next two, carbon budget and RPEI. So historically, these have not had their own budget line items. We have had to fund efforts around decarbonization of the existing housing stock, and RPEI, which is our district energy plant and Regent Park. We've had to fund those through our existing state of good repair capital, which takes away from other important investments we need to make in the portfolio. So this year, those have been carved out and have their own capital budget streams. And then finally, development capital. This is the last area where we've seen significant increases in our capital budget. So if we go to the next page, I'll just talk through a little bit of the overview here and just highlight a few items. I'm going to go through the items listed in the two boxes at the bottom and the right-hand side just to share with folks. So the average tenancy length that we see amongst our tenants today is 12 and a half years. And I will note that that metric continues to go up every year. So we continue to see a great challenge in the housing environment within Toronto and the ability for tenants within Toronto Community Housing to exit that program. It continues to be a very needful program for those who are low income or experiencing challenges within our city. The average RGI household income, as you see right beside that, is just over $19,000. For context, I'll share that's a little over half of a minimum wage annual income, right? And far below what would be considered to be a living wage within the city of Toronto. The average RGI rent that is paid by a household in Toronto Community Housing is $448 a month. So as a quick aside, if you think about the annual rent that an RGI unit generates for Toronto Community Housing, there is no situation, no scenario where an RGI tenancy and rent would pay the associated operating costs of that unit, right? So there will always be a need for additional subsidy from the City of Toronto and from other funders to ensure that we can continue to provide the operation of our housing units and the supports that are necessary. We cannot do it on the revenue of rent alone under our current model. And noting the last item there that 44% of our households' primary income source is either through Ontario Works or ODSP. And there has been minimal increases to ODSP over the years and no significant increase to Ontario Works since 2018. So it continues to be a very challenging when we look at the sources of income for our households. Very quickly down the right-hand side, sorry, I have a little frog in my throat. I think I'll be okay. Nope. Yeah. I should be okay. Down the right-hand side, just to note a few characteristics of our households. So over half of our households are female-led households. 22% identify a member with a mental health disability. 37% of our households speak a language other than English at home. Again, more than half of our households identify at least one member in the household with a disability. And we have provided housing for over 1,600 households that have come into Toronto Community Housing through what's called rapid rehousing, which is provided permanent housing for folks that are coming directly out of the shelter system here in Toronto, where I'll remind people over 12,000 people every night are using shelter services or sleeping rough within the city. And 35, I'll get into more details on this on the next page, but quite a number of our units are within communities and within buildings that live within high needs communities within our portfolio. So I'd just like to share all of that to remind everybody of the realities that we face within the portfolio of Toronto Community Housing and the growing acuity of needs for tenants that are living within Toronto Community Housing and the needs for supports within those areas. So on that topic, I'll go to the next page, which gets into more detail on exactly that. We continue to see really tremendous growth in the acuity of needs within our tenant base within Toronto Community Housing. If you look at the chart on the right-hand side here, we've identified, out of our total portfolio, 33 of our developments that we would classify as areas that are areas of chronic vulnerability. So really deep levels of need within those buildings. And then just beside that, 9 different communities that we've identified as areas experiencing chronic gun violence. These represent, if you look at the percentages at the bottom there, 28% of our units within those buildings of chronic vulnerabilities and 6% within the communities of chronic gun violence. These are the areas where we believe focused support is necessary to address the challenges that we face within these buildings. I'll direct your attention just to the box at the bottom left corner of the slide here. We've done some very early analysis. I don't have a robust report to bring forward yet, but we're working on that. But we've done some very early analysis to look at what are the differences between operating different types of buildings within our portfolio. And the reality is when we look at our very high needs, chronic vulnerability buildings, all of the costs are higher. Right, so there are more insurance claims, and every individual insurance claim is more costly. There are more investments in cleaning that are required. There are more investments in maintenance. There are repeated investments in maintenance because of issues like vandalism and challenges that we experience within those buildings. I've only named a few of the bullet points, but there are numerous categories that we've looked at that show that it is much more costly to operate buildings that are experiencing chronic vulnerabilities throughout the tenant population. And so I raise that in the budget primarily because we believe that through greater investments in supports for tenants excuse me, within those buildings, that we can provide a better community experience within those buildings, and we can also address those rising costs that we continue to experience that are associated with those buildings. I'm going to move on to the next slide that talks about stewardship of a public asset. I'll remind our board that we maintain a housing stock asset base of just under $15 billion across all the various buildings within our portfolio today. And yet, if you look at the blue box sort of in the middle of the page here, more than 2/3 of our tenants are living in buildings that we would classify as being in poor or critical condition. So I want to highlight that because it's really important to talk about the value of the investments and the importance of the investments that are made in maintaining a state of good repair across our housing stock and across our portfolio. I don't want to give anyone the impression that this is a problem that, despite record levels of investments, that we have solved. We are still very much living in an environment where our buildings require very significant investment. Our experts tell us we need to be investing sort of between 2% and 4% of our asset value every year just to maintain, just to tread water and stay where we are. And yet, you know, we've been investing just a little over 2% for a number of years now, and we've made some meaningful improvements. So we have maintained, but we have also improved the overall condition of the portfolio. But I want to say that's an average, right? And so we look at things on average. That doesn't mean that every building has been addressed. It doesn't mean that we don't still have very critical issues within buildings that we know need to be addressed and that we know we continue to need to make investments in. And I'm really happy to talk about the fact that there's a significant increase in this year's budget, which we've worked on with the city, around providing significantly more capital for our state of good repair budget going forward. So one of the big challenges that we've experienced is we have a policy within the organization that says if you're going to spend more than $1,500 on a particular fix or repair, we automatically capitalize that. So it goes into our capital budget. The problem with that is that all the money that goes into our capital budget takes away from the needed planned capital renewal projects, which tend to be quite large and significant investments that increase the longevity and the usefulness of our buildings in the long term. And so as those smaller jobs and smaller projects continue to increase, again, it takes away from the ability for us to finance and, to fund the more significant jobs. So there's a really meaningful investment in this year's budget of a $40 million increase that we've worked on with the city. That will allow, that's our estimate for how much those sort of smaller jobs are costing us right now. So that addition will allow us to continue to do those small jobs, which are necessary. They're based on requests that we get from tenants and from our building site staff. So we can keep doing that work, but no longer pull it out of our state of good repair capital budget. So that frees up a significant amount of funding that we can now use to do much more significant investments like roofs and windows and building envelopes and the big picture items that have a long-term return for us on preserving the longevity of our buildings. Lastly, before I leave this slide, though, I do want to just highlight the third bullet on the bottom. We continue to experience a very significant backlog of maintenance needs and capital repairs and improvements that are necessary within our buildings. It should be no surprise. I told you that 2/3 of our buildings are in poor or critical condition. So the corollary to that is that there's a significant backlog of repairs and renewals that are necessary. So the addition is great, but it will not solve this problem for us, right? It lets us make better incremental improvement across the overall portfolio, but we still have more than $2 billion worth of cumulative backlog of investments that are necessary across our building portfolio today. I will move on to the next page that talks about our risks and mitigation strategies. So just taking these in turn, I talked a little bit about the first one already, our inability to meet what we would consider to be a reasonable standard of service. I think this continues to be an ongoing risk for us at Toronto Community Housing, both from the perspective of how well we can maintain and operate our buildings, how well we can provide necessary supports for tenants, and how well we can make those ongoing capital investments and renewals across our building portfolio as well. We've operated within a constrained environment for a long time, and this budget moves us forward in terms of our ability to meet those improved standards going forward. So we'll talk about that as we get into some of the increases within the operating budget. Second is the capital funding and sustaining of assets. I talked about that quite a bit on the previous slide, but I absolutely want to highlight it's a continued and ongoing risk for the organization. I will remind our board that more than half of our capital funding is provided by the federal government, and the agreement that we have in place only goes to the end of 2027. So it's imperative that we negotiate an extension of that agreement and additional capital funding going out beyond 2027. Initial indications from the federal government are that they're interested in having those conversations, that they're not interested in an interruption of funds flowing. So those are great indications, but we need to get down to the hard work of truly negotiating that next set of investments with Toronto Community Housing and the city. The third category of risk is financial stability and sustainability. I highlighted earlier on in the presentation that there is no current model where rent revenue will pay the entirety of the costs for Toronto Community Housing. So that means we will always be in a challenging situation for financial sustainability unless there is a very clear commitment to a cost-based subsidy from our primary funder, the City of Toronto, or there's a model to move towards generating more revenue for Toronto Community Housing. Those are really the only two approaches that can move us towards a more sustainable financial picture for the future. The next one is cybersecurity and integrity of our critical systems. We've talked about this many times with the board. We've come through, I think, a really important time of investment in moving towards a cloud-first approach to our technology and getting us onto modern platforms. And I'll remind the board that we're moving from very, very difficult and archaic old systems onto these new ones. So we've made great progress there, but there's still tremendous work to do into ensuring that we are operating in a technologically robust way and addressing not just the cybersecurity issues of today, but the way that those change in the future. So you'll see investments within the budget that address those issues as well. Next, I'll talk about compliance. Board members will be familiar with the fact that we are subject to a number of different accountability officers. We've been reviewed by the Auditor General of the city, by the Ombudsman, And we continue to experience recommendations and issues that have to be addressed with respect to how we operate the business. So you'll also see investments in the budget that talk to improving our level of compliance and our ability to respond to those recommendations as well. And then finally, community safety and security. I highlighted this in one of the earlier slides as well. We continue to have communities that experience challenges with respect to safety within their neighborhoods. That affects our buildings, our communities, it affects our tenants, and it also affects our staff. So very much an area of continued investment for the organization to make sure that we're addressing this, but acknowledging too that Toronto Community Housing cannot do this important work alone, and it will be necessary to partner with the city and so many other important partners to make sure that we provide a more safe environment for our tenants and for our staff. That's our risk highlights. I'm going to move to the next slide, but I'm going to do it very quickly because it really links back to all of the risks. But again, just to reemphasize, these are the areas of priority action. And so therefore, these are also the areas that you will see of priority investments within the budget right here for 2025. Meeting our standards of service and making sure that we're providing the best possible service we can within our communities. Prioritizing our state of good repair, our capital planning, and climate action within our buildings. Enhancing financial sustainability and stability, investing in cybersecurity and the integrity of our technology and systems, addressing the compliance issue and risk issues that we experience, and then fostering community safety. Those are the big areas of investment that you'll see us talking about within the budget. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to pass it over to our CFO, Lily Chen, to review the budget in some more detail for everyone.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So on a consolidated basis between TCHC and TSHC for the 2025 budget, it's fully funded. So the total budget is at $1.37 billion compared to the 2024 approved budget of $1.24 billion, representing 10% increase on an aggregate basis. On the operating budget, it projected around $100 million compared to $750 million in 2024. TCHC's 2025 budget provides a balanced approach to ensure consistent service to our tenants. It also considers recommendation from the 2023 EY Financial Sustainability Plan, where we know that investing today will enable future long-term efficiency and cost savings. Accountability will be driven by ongoing reporting development that is responsive and has consistent measures and reflected the performance of TCHC service system. For the building repair capital, in 2025, we will be funded at $380 million, similar to the anticipated capital spend for 2024. The 2025 year-end FCI is estimated to be 13.43% at the end of 2024. Based on the previous 10-year projection of the FCI target of 10%, TCHC is no longer projected to meet that target. We have put forward a $40 million incremental small ask for the small capital repairs, which the city has committed in funding. As shown a little earlier, this year we have 3 new separate capital streams. In response to the climate action, carbon budget, and RPEI, combined it will be at around $38.5 million to address the deep retrofit in 2 of our communities, Scarlet Wood and Sparrowway, and RPEI as well to set up the second plant to address the energy needs in our Regent Park community out of a district energy expansion system. For development capital, for the 2025 ask of $141 million, the city is also fully funded as well. This will enable us to continue to replace the aging RGI units, building brand new housing and revitalization communities. Key objective of this work include replacing aging RGI buildings and continue to develop new affordable rental and creation of the welcoming mixed use and mixed income communities. On the IT and corporate capital's $18 million ask, the city has committed to fund us around $17 million. The difference is a city fleet services, which we will strive to achieve the synergy with city fleet budget. On the IT front, it's a multi-year ask investment to implement the cybersecurity program, especially in response to the most recent AG audit, to enhance our cyber posture and also the infrastructure upgrade. Corporate capital includes repairing 2 commercial assets, which has a commercial revenue tied to it, as well as implementing a new HRS system. It also includes new funding for senior transition services. Next slide. This provides a visual of the comparison between 25 to 2024 budget. I do want to highlight the operating budget increase. Thanks to the city's investment of $60 million base funding increase and also $2.03 million subsidy increase related to the new enhanced initiatives. Out of the $71.1 million operating pressure, $9.7 million will be funded out of TCHC and TCHC's operating surplus as a one-time bridging and balancing strategy. Next, I would like to talk about the net new investment and funding from the city over 10 years on the capital budget and plan. So on the 10-year aggregate basis, we will be receiving $460 million, primarily related to our SOGR building repair program, which represents around 80%. In 2025 alone, all our capital asks have been fully funded. I'm going to break it out for you. So the incremental net new money for building repair capital will be $40 million to address some of the small capital repairs that will shift the funding for us to be able to continue to improve our FCI index. On the development capital, out of the $88.3 million asked, the city has committed in funding us close to $10 million in order for us to fully fund the $141 million project cost in 2025 in advancing our build, especially in the Regent Park community and also Alex Park and Lawrence Heights. For IT, on the 10-year basis, it's going to be $60 million. For carbon and RPI, it's going to be $35 million. In terms of the 2025 capital budget overview, here we're showing the 2025 new ask comparing to the previously approved budget. So on the aggregate basis, the investment from the city and also other orders of government will represent $3.5 billion over 10 years. 66% will be focusing on our building repair capital that represents around $2.3 billion, and 32% focusing on our development capital investment. The carbon budget also includes $10.4 million from Natural Resource Canada grant to advance our carbon deep retrofit project. The development capital also includes $52.6 million in carry forward of funding from prior years out of the city building fund. Moving on, I would like to give you an overview of the operating budget. For the both organizations combined, the operated gross expenditure of $800 million, which $670 million representing TCHC portion, which the funding sources are our residential revenue of $776 million representing 3.3% compared to prior year, and the city's subsidy increase of $62 million in total, including base funding increase as well as the new initiative that represent around $19.3 million increase. Out of the gross expenditures, 9.9% is TSHC direct expenses, 6.7% representing increase for TCHC direct expenses. In this slide, we're also showing a 5-year view for the current year plus the 2 outlook years. I do want to emphasize our budget modeling are based on the planning assumption really aligned with the city's economic factor, and also layering onto TCHC and TSHC specific cost pressures. For example, our collective bargaining agreements, vendor committed contracts, insurance and utility increase. The next slide is TCHC only. So out of the $660 million gross expenditure, the funding sources will be $283 million out of our residential and other revenue sources. The city investment will be around $326 million, representing 19% increase compared to prior year. There's also a one-time bridging in the balancing strategy for both base and new enhanced initiatives. That's around $6 million in total. In terms of the 2025 key cost drivers, here we're showing a visual between revenue and cost. I do want to call out the primary drivers for the $71.7 million pressure, representing $33 million per year base pressure one-time funded in the 2024 budget cycle, as well as $38.3 million increase in base inflationary pressures. The volume, as Sean alluded, also the service level acuity pressures from our tenants, and new enhanced tenant programming needs. On the funding strategy, here we also highlight that $60 million base funding increase, as well as the $2 million base funding for the new enhanced initiative, as well as the $9.7 million one-time bridging and balancing strategy to support tenant-centric activities to meet our service standards, vulnerable tenant community, combat the gun violence, and also risk mitigation compliance requirement. Moving on in the next section, I want to talk about the 26 and 27 outlook. So this is the second year we are providing the city and also the leadership team and the board with a 3-year rolling plan. And all those key cost drivers are based on the planning assumption aligned with the city and also our own cost pressures. So for 2026, based on the current modeling, the pressure will be around $31.3 million, and on an incremental basis for 2027, it will be $28.1 million. Moving on to the next section of capital budgets and plan submission. I provided an overview in the previous slide. I want to show the breakdown. So on the 10-year basis, it's city's investment to renew, upgrade on our critical building assets to provide safe, clean, and quality units and living environments for the tenants. So on the 10-year basis is $3.45 billion, which the project updates representing $248 million. That includes $160 million for the city-funded portion for our SOGR in 2034, and $210 million for the small value repairs from 2025 to 2033, as well as $9.9 million for development projects, including the cost escalation and more affordable rental units, mainly for Regent Park 4 and 5 and Alex Park project. On the new project, which represent $154 million, including $16.12 million to fund the IT, to keeping the lights on, as well as the cybersecurity and CISO support work. Corporate capital of $7.6 million, community and tenant support. The city has recommend to fully fund the TCHC for over 4 years work, around $11.3 million that will include vulnerable tenant support, gun violence, as well as some of the community upgrade to support tenant activities. Moving on to SOGR. So between 2024 and 2037, our FCI is set to steadily improve. At the end of the 10-year funding plan for 2027, with other orders of government, our current projection based on city's new funding injection will improve from last year's projection of 12.4% to 11.5% in 2027. The backlog will be reduced from the projected 1.79% as we continue our building repairs retrofit and also repair program. At the end of the 10-year, the backlog is projected at $2.5 billion out of the $17.6 billion asset. The next slide is showing you the breakdown of the 10-year plan. So the investment will be $2.3 billion, and they're broken down by different budget categories between planned capital, demand capital, energy upgrades. The next slide indicating the development capital plan for over 10 years between 2025 to 2034. Our current projects for the in-flight, the total project cost is estimated at $1.12 billion. The forecast inflow is around $891 million, so the net shortfall will be $232 million. In terms of the funding, as I alluded earlier, the total incremental pressure of $88.3 million, the city has funded additional $10 million in 2025. The remaining pressure and net shortfall will be around $78.4 million, which we will continue our discussion with the city in future budget cycle. Moving on to the IT capital, here we're showing you the breakdown between keeping the lights on and some of the high needs critical IT project, primarily focusing on enhancing our cyber security posture for NOVA 1 and NOVA 2 combined at $4 million, as well as elevating or enhancing some of our infrastructure needs in terms of software upgrade, for example, firewall upgrade, replacement, IT asset management, and also next-gen security network planning. For the corporate IT capital and tenant support, $3 million will be granted to replace our current outdated HRS system. And around $2.7 million will be centering around the commercial property upgrade. Moving on to the last and final slide in terms of capital needs constraint. On the 10-year basis, it will be around $8.1 billion, primarily related to $189 million building repair capital shortfall, the $78.4 million development capital, as well as the remaining pressure from Regent Park Energy Plant. In terms of the $1.3 billion over 10 years for SOGR, that's based on the city's asset management plan, which was released in May this year based on the third-party independent assessment. That's on an annual basis is around $334 million, representing TCHC's unmet SOGR needs. And then the last item, $6.5 billion, that's the TCHC's estimate to meet net zero target by 2040. That's the end of the presentation.
Can I ask if there are any questions for Sean, Lily, or Any of the other ELT members as it relates to the budget? John?
Thank you for the information. In regard to the 2025-2034 capital budget and plan submission, Lily, you didn't, through you, Madam Chair, Lily, you didn't mention the sizable drop that's expected in spending between 2027 and 2028-29, where it goes from building capital repair of $350 million down to $174 million in 2029. To what do you attribute that sizable drop?
Through the chair, is that related to the building repair capital or most of the development capital?
It says building repair capital. It almost goes in half.
John, maybe you could point out what slide number it is to make it easier for Lily to...
It's page 56 I have.
Okay.
That's because...
Attachment 1.
Yeah, in 2028, our federal contribution from CMHC out of the National Housing Strategy will end. We will continue allocate and working with the city and all of the government to secure additional funding to advance our state of good repair program for our building assets.
So under development capital, there's a line item for federal funding of $20 million, $30 million, and $35 million. But I'm not speaking about that. I'm speaking about the building capital repair budget, which is the first line item. And there's no notation about federal funding there.
Maybe I could just step in. So through the chair, you're right, but the building capital repair line item is funded by two sources. So it's funded by City of Toronto funding into the level of $160 million a year. And it's also funded by, as Lily just mentioned, the National Housing Strategy funding from the federal government. And the contract to provide that funding ends at the end of 2027. So that's why you see the fall off between 27 and 28.
Okay.
We are confident that we will be able to negotiate some form of an extension or new agreement with the federal government, but until we have done that, we can't illustrate that in our budgeting process. So our budgeting process currently shows a pretty significant gap between our long-term capital needs and what we are funded for.
Okay. All right. So if those line items were there, I would have been able to pick up on that. Okay. And in regard to the operating budget, so we've gone from 750 million to just over 800 million in a year, of which 6.7% of that increase is attributed to the rest of TCHC, which is us, and just under 10% to the Seniors Corporation. On our 6.7% increase, which is 47 million, and I'm looking at page 51 now, how much of that is part, what is that mostly attributed to, that 6.7% increase? Is part of that the movement of capital from, or building maintenance repairs from capital to operating, or where's that 47 million coming from?
Through the chair, it's primarily comprised of inflationary pressures for both labor and non-labor. So labor, we're looking at around $18 million. And for non-labor, it's the rest. We also have a reclassification of a previously embedded into the SOGR budget. It's for restoration containment. It's around roughly $8.8 million.
Okay. Okay. And I guess, Sean, I've just some questions for you. It's in regard to an item that was in the appendix earlier, and it's on headcount. Are there any initiatives that you're undertaking to realign headcount or bring it, there's been a considerable increase since 2021. Now, some of that was that we had contracted out buildings and we brought some of that service in-house, and we see that, I believe that was between 2021 and 2022 when that happened. But I'm just wondering if there's, if you are examining the headcount in some of the, some of the line item areas here. We have 42 people in strategic planning and communications. We have 63 people in development. I'm just wondering if you're looking at any of these headcounts.
Thank you. Through the chair, absolutely. We regularly look at headcounts. We're a very large and robust corporation. There are lots of different things that we're required to do and that we need to do in order to provide a safe and well-operating environment for our tenants. So I do think we're making smart investments. That said, we do look at these regularly. The example I can give you is that we do line level budget reviews, which include our FTE counts on a department by department basis. Just this year alone, I don't have the exact number, but I think it was around $12 million in savings that were identified from the prior year budget. Now that's hard to parse out because it's dwarfed a little bit by the increases that are necessary from an inflationary perspective. But that is $12 million that we did not ask for in terms of increases because we were able to go back and find it within the existing budgets. A lot of that comes from areas like procurement savings, for example, and pursuing new strategies to lower our costs when working with our vendors. I would note that it's our investment in having a robust support staff in place, including finance and procurement and those supporting areas that allow us to achieve those kinds of savings going forward as well. But I don't want to give you the impression that we're not looking at potential labor savings where possible. We will always look at that alongside of our budget investments to make sure that we're making smart investments.
So I'll just ask you, I know that there's an increase in the headcount in the CEO's office. It used to be 2, which is small. Now it's budgeted at 7. I'm wondering if you could tell me about that.
I can. So through the chair, that increase was actually from the prior year, and that was in direct response to the Ombudsman's report looking at the human rights complaint process. So as we are implementing our response and new processes around the human rights complaint process, that's currently being managed out of my office. That will likely find its way into a different part of the organization after we finish putting that in place, but right now that's why that's there. So that number will go back to a more reasonable number very soon.
Okay. So thank you for that. So, okay, I appreciate the answers. That's good. Thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
No more questions?
Oh, actually, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So in this appendix, and sorry, it was from the earlier session, and it's not included in this session. Maybe somebody could answer. There are headcount. Oh, I see. There is a separate line item for TCHC. There is a separate line item. That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Brian?
Mine is sort of budget, but really relates to the overview that Sean gave at the beginning, especially in terms of the average RGI. And I'm wondering, no, it's not TCHC's role directly, but whether we could ask the city through our councillors to raise that issue at the city level to maybe bring together the large mayor's group to ask for a significant increase in RGI, or not RGI, but OW and ODSP rates, because I mean, it's atrocious, the level of that people have to survive on, and we need to speak out about that. And I know it's not our role directly to raise that issue with the province, but I think through obviously our shareholder, it's their role. I mean, it would both hopefully have a positive impact for our tenants, as well as the fact that a certain, probably quite small percentage of that might come back to revenue as rent increases. But I do think that we won't be fulfilling our role if we don't raise that issue, because, I mean, if we really are tenants first.
So through the chair, I very much appreciate the question and the comment. I share the concern. We talk about the housing crisis within Toronto, and we talk about the issue from a supply and demand perspective, but at the root of it is very much an income crisis, particularly when you're looking at non-market housing and housing for folks that are living in low incomes. So we certainly talk about that in terms of the impact that it has on Toronto community housing from a community development and financial sustainability perspective. When it comes to advocating to other levels of government, we partner with the city on that. So we work through the government relations functions of the City of Toronto to make sure that that our information can help to inform advocacy positions that City Council chooses to take, for example, and then that the city's GR function then works forward with other levels of government. So we will continue to do that and share what it means on the ground from a community housing perspective and how the implications of that for our tenants.
I wonder whether it would be appropriate for us to, at some point, have a motion to request council to look at that and to be more engaged in looking at this issue. I don't know
In your hands.
whether that's appropriate or not, but I think we should formally make that.
Can we move something to have council? Like, is that within our purview to?
So I think we could take that away and consider whether we can bring that back to a future meeting of the board.
Perfect.
As an action item.
Perfect. Thank you, Dara. Are there any other questions? Lily, I just had a quick one. You talk about 1.6 million. I think it comes from the mayor's priorities. And you said that 800 of it is conditional on receiving other government funding to match. So if that isn't received, will you fund those programs through surplus, or are those programs not to be funded at all?
Through the chair, back to the chair, the 800,000 will be funded out of our operating surplus.
Okay.
Because this is of ultimate importance to our
Yes.
tenants and also our
Yes.
communities.
Okay, and that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so they will be funded no matter what. Perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions? No, and I don't see any hands. The only thing I did want to note is that the board has spent a significant amount of time reviewing the budget. I know Nick McCrae, who's our finance chair, and I had a number of meetings with Lily and Sean as we were moving through this process. And the whole board has spent two meetings on reviewing the budget, and there was a lot of, the discussion was very fulsome, and we wanted to ensure that we understood and supported the budget that's being presented today. So the board has certainly put in the effort to understand the implications of this budget. So could I have a motion? Got it right this time. A motion to approve the 2025 operating and capital budget for TCHC. Benita, thank you. Brian, a seconder. All in favor? Motion's been passed, and move on to the council. So thank you very much. I know it's a lot of work, and the board certainly appreciates all the effort that's put into this. So we will move on to item number 7, and we have Miguel, Mr. Avila, has a deputation on the quarterly report to the Ombudsman, the TCHC's tenant human rights complaint process. Welcome.
Hi there, good morning.
Sorry, sir, I don't know if your microphone's on.
Oh, is it on?
Yeah, now it's on. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Okay, good. So we are discussing a report in regards to the Ombudsman. I'm here to speak on recommendation 3, 4, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Before I do that, I have a little disclaimer. Here, me speaking at this board is solely as a resident, as an indigenous resident living at 220 Oak Street, and TCHC is my landlord. Right. But I just want to give a little bit of history. Last month, we approved the human rights complaint internal process without the ombudsman present at the room to answer if he's okay with that. I think his staff tried to answer questions. Should we approve it? Should not? I guess the interest of this board was to rush through it or get it done before, there are more unnecessary delays in the implementation of this human rights policy. There's one moving part that has not been yet consolidated, is the internal transfer, priority transfer. I am applying for that for a crisis priority transfer in view that I'm not able to sleep in my unit due to noises that occurs every night since September 27. So in applying, I made a discovery that I was in arrears. Little did I know that I have an arrears with TCHC. So I was told that I have an invoice for $280, and no one cared to communicate to me about this. So the transfer staff said to me, Miguel, if you are in arrears, we cannot process your application. So fine, I went to GoFundMe to make a online help request for funds, and I was able to pay off my $380 arrears. The problem is here that should be addressed on the recommendations is communication. Proper channels of communication to tenants. If this invoice was sitting in someone's box since August 24, and I found out in November 6, when I received a communication from the transfer people, that was a big gap of time. But anyway, I was able to pay it, and now I'm not in arrears anymore. I thank the people who pitch in my GoFundMe page. I had to do it, because that's the only way. I don't have money. I'm poor. I live in ODSP. Anyhow, that's one of the recommendations I want to make to avoid this kind of pitfalls in the future. Communication is so important. And you cannot tell me, oh my God, Miguel, we forgot to tell you that you owe us money. How it happens, The other thing I learned as well is that apparently 60,000 tenants that live in the family and single units cease to be tenant residents when they apply for the senior portfolio. There is no transfer mechanism to put them into the senior division. You have to go back to the beginning of the line, apply for to be transferred to a senior building. I'm almost 60, by the way. And I found out that this is a systemic issue. And I wonder if the Office of Ombudsman is listening to me. This is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. Because if I am reach a level of seniority, I should be transferred to a unit where, accommodate my needs, rather than to stay in a building that is not suitable for seniors, for all people like myself. So if you're going to put me in a building that does not have accommodations for seniors, do it. We just saw the budget. Apparently, there's no money, but maybe we can make a pitch with the mayor and say that if we don't have a space for seniors, future residents, let's make sure that they have 24-hour personal support workers on site. Oh, my time is up. Look, I did it in 5 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, guys, and I'm always here. I'm always, anywhere in downtown you can find me. I'll be later at Toronto Police Services Board, so you can catch me there.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a motion to receive item number 7, the Q3 Ombudsman Report? Benita, thank you. Brian, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. We will move on to item number 8, and Benita will ask you to leave due to your conflict. And John, I think this was your item.
It is. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a few questions. First of all, is why is this coming to us so late? This is December the 12th, and this contract is supposed to be in effect basically in 3 weeks' time. Why didn't we hear about this in June, March, September?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Yes, we started negotiations with TELUS in April, actually, of 2024, and have been going back and forth with renewal terms and pricing. We did complete the contract terms in November, but we were not able to make the November 4th BIFAC meeting, and therefore it needed to come to this board meeting.
So it would have been, I would have to say that we're being given almost no choice here, because we're told that it's cost prohibitive and that we have to approve it. It would have been to our advantage as board members to have known that this was something that was in the offing. You said you've been negotiating for several months. Is this price is a 20% increase? What was the starting point from TELUS in the negotiations?
Through the chair, the pricing is based on the square footage, the power and cooling needs. Our needs have changed since the previous agreement. So based on the space we require, the security, power, and cooling, it also adjusted the price, and there are some inflationary costs. So it's not a like-for-like comparison because we did make some adjustments to the previous agreement.
So I noticed that the City of Toronto no longer, so we've been negotiating since 2024, but the City of Toronto did not renew their lease with TELUS. What did the City of Toronto do?
Through the chair, the City of Toronto built their own data center, and that's just finishing up.
So if they've built their own data center, have they moved into that data center?
Through the chair, yes, I believe they have moved into the data center. I'm not up to speed on all the, but they have moved in, yes.
And was there any discussion about other boards and agencies related to the city using that data center as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Through the chair, yes, there have been discussions. We are in the middle of making some adjustments to our network and infrastructure, and we will resume those conversations with the city once we know what our data center needs are.
Are there any other city boards or agencies that have moved into the city's data center?
Through the chair,
as
you
the
would need to
TTC
ask the
or-
CTO that question. I don't have that information.
Okay. What do other city entities do in regard to data centers, such as the TTC or Toronto Hydro or the Toronto Police Services?
Through the chair, I do not have that information. I'm not privileged to that information.
Well, I don't know that it would be privileged information, but it would be, I would think, fairly easily attainable. And so this is a sole source contract. We've been negotiating for a year and a half, but the report says we didn't have the resources to look around.
Through the chair, that started in April of 2024, so that was 7 months ago.
Oh, we just started negotiations in April?
Correct.
Oh, I thought you said 2023. So a relocation cost is prohibited. What kind of cost would that be?
Through the chair, we would require to issue an RFP, so there are costs to that. We would be required to do planning and resources, and that total time would take at least a year to make those moves. Plus, there will be disruption to the business. I haven't calculated the exact costs, but it is.
So we would have had to start this a year ago?
Correct.
And we didn't, and so why didn't we do that?
Through the chair, because we are working on other more critical projects, including reviewing our network and infrastructure, which will change our our data center needs, and therefore it wasn't the right time to be negotiating a new data center since we are in flux right now.
Okay, thank you.
So can I ask a question? What are the termination clauses? Because you say that you're assessing and discussing with the city, sharing their space. So isn't this a 3-year, this is a 3-year lease?
Through the chair, that's correct, but we are spending the next 2 years looking at our network and infrastructure through that network redesign, and at that point, we'll know our data center requirements.
Okay. And so what are the termination, can you get out if you can move in with the city?
Through the chair, yes, our agreement with TELUS, I believe, is we can go into a month-to-month agreement at that point.
So it's a 2-year lease and then month-to-month?
It is a 3-year lease and then month-to-month.
Okay, so at the end of the 2 years, when you've assessed your needs, at that point, you can't move in to the city space?
Through the chair, at that point, we will need to then go out to RFP or go to the city and then plan our move. So that takes time.
Sean?
So through the chair, I'll just note that data centers are a notoriously sort of captured environment. It's very difficult to change once you've made the investment to be in that environment. But we still want to get best value for money, right? So just to add to what the team is working on, those couple of years of time spent are, remember, we're midway through this journey, right? We've gone to cloud-based technologies for a lot of our services, but not for everything yet. So remember, our data center provides the infrastructure and systems that are necessary to run things that are still on-premise for us. But we're still in the process of migrating more and more of those systems to be cloud-based, which means they no longer require a data center presence. So there's a pretty significant change happening with our underlying data center requirements. So I believe what Louisa was trying to highlight was it isn't so much that we're going to spend 2 years trying to decide what we want, but continuing to work through that journey of probably having a shrinking footprint and of need for our data centers. So we have to figure out what that's going to look like once we get through that journey. Then we have to go through the process of figuring out what's the right way to have our data center domiciled, whether it's through the city with another provider, continuing on with TELUS. So there's a number of sort of steps in the process to get from where we are to where we need to be. And just to your specific question, generally we would have exit clauses in our contracts as well, so we can confirm, but I would expect that we would have an ability to exit before the 3 years. There may be a 30 or a 60-day sort of requirement
Notice
associated
period,
with that,
yeah.
but it'd be quite typical for us to have an exit period, so we can confirm that.
Are there any other questions? And I would just like to highlight John's point about, at least notifying the board or BIFAC that you're going through this process rather than waiting till the very end when it is a 3-week, right? And I think that that's not just an issue with this, but a general issue. So I think that BIFAC can be notified that you're working on items like this so that they, okay? So can I have a motion to, did you have a question, Brian, or you want to, okay. A motion to approve? Thank you. Naram, seconder, all in favor? Any opposed? John, thank you. So we will move on to item 10A. And I pulled this item. I don't know if anyone else, thank you, John. Sorry, I forgot it. I'm sorry, Vanita. Thanks, John. I pulled this item. I don't know if anyone else has any questions on the facility management budget envelope reallocations. So my questions are, again, I think the board is expecting a root cause for the increase in the demand spending and then the significant decrease between 2023. It's like $50 million, so we do need to understand that. And I think attached to this report is a schedule of steps that you took to reduce the demand spending. And I've objected to the fact that you keep saying it's complete, the assessment of the root causes, because the board's still waiting for that report. And my other question is, on the chart, you have a number of movements into different areas, and you've got your holistic retrofit is now 60% over the original budget. HVAC is 76% over the original budget. Parking garages are 105% over original budget. My question is, are these projects that are just over budget, or are you adding work to that category? And so it's new work, and that's why you're moving money in?
Okay, through the chair, these are good questions. I would like to go through one category at a time. Is that okay?
You can answer as however you would like.
Okay. All right, so we're looking at holistic budget, which is additional $3 million. And I just want to take a back step. This is really like a Q3 2024 result. Okay, Q4 reallocation, if there's it will become in February. So we're looking at $3 million extra in holistic. I just want to say that most of the projects that are ongoing in holistic, that they are bigger size projects. So they're now at the 50%, 60% point of completion, meaning that they're all on a roll. So the progress are running a lot faster. Like I have now less unforeseen site conditions, because usually it happens in the beginning of the projects. I also have, I don't have like shop drawings are approved. I don't have like products lead time because that already waited in the first year. These projects, they are now in the mid-second year or the third year while we're winding down. So the progress are going a lot faster. So that's the reason why we need to reallocate $3 million onto the holistic category.
So this was money that you planned originally to spend in 2025, and the project has moved ahead faster than you had expected?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So when it comes to HVAC,
Yep.
we have had a lot of emergency boilers replacements. And when there's no hot water, no heat, I have to replace them. Or we have to, like, team has to replace them. So we have, like, a lot of these boilers are beyond their lifespan, and we are on a planned replacement.
You have a life cycle
Yeah.
projection, and so when you're budgeting, you look at what you deem to be
Correct.
failing during
Correct.
the year?
Correct. We have
And
plans.
so you underestimated that by?
No.
No.
So some of them, like they're being maintained, but some of them are beyond the lifespan because we don't have enough money to replace all the boilers. So we put them on a priority list. So some of them were already maintained beyond, we expect it to last about 25 years. They're at the 30-year span. We're trying, to replace them. We just don't have enough money. Towards the end, we're now looking at some of them are emergencies, boilers replacements.
Okay.
Okay. And with the parking garages, there are more change orders because when we open up the garage to look at the concrete delamination, it was delaminated more than we had expected. So we have to fix them. Like if it's a shallow, we thought that, we put in a calculation of shallow versus deep retrofit. Turned out that they were deeper than we had expected, and they're more expensive to fix than shallow delamination. And there are also a couple of garage jobs that we started on phase one. We have to go to phases because we break it up into different phases due to budget availability. But when we're looking at the concrete, we're so deteriorated badly that we have to advance phase two to continue with the work. So that's part of the reasons why, it went beyond what we had expected.
Okay. So I really appreciate that information. And for me, budgeting is not numbers on a page. It's about that analysis. And you have to explain that in the reports. I would really appreciate it because I'm very sympathetic to what you're trying to juggle here. But, last year we had issues because we were taking out so much money out of planned and putting it into demand. And so everybody was concerned about, well, what planned projects are you deferring? And so that became the analysis, where the money is coming from.
Okay.
But we also need the information as to where the money is going to and why it's going there.
Okay.
And so I would just ask that, because I really appreciate your responses, Daisy, and I would ask that when you're reporting, that analysis is key.
Okay.
And they're not, budget to me, it's not a math exercise. You don't just calculate your variance, A minus B equals C, and oh, there's my variance. It requires the analysis. So I would just really appreciate it because everything you've said makes perfect sense. And I would just appreciate that it's in the report at the beginning.
We will include those analysis in future reports. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Daisy as it relates to the reallocation? So can I ask for a motion to approve? John, thank you. Vanita, seconder. All in favor? Great. And again, thank you, Daisy, for the extra information. So we will move on to item 11A. And we have pulled that because there are some changes to the dates. Our June 30th meeting. Dara, can I just turn this over to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
In relation to the schedule that we have before the board for its consideration this morning, we've been asked to look at potentially moving the June meeting date forward by a week in order to accommodate the board chair's availability during the month of June, if I can be direct. And then as well, we've received advice from the City of Toronto that the room that we had been allocated for our December 12th, 2025 board meeting is no longer going to be available to us on that date. And as a consequence of that, we're looking at December 11th or 19th as the alternative date for that meeting. So it may be that we need to make some further amendments to the schedule, but we wanted to highlight for the board those two changes to the schedule as part of this morning's discussion so that they can be addressed in the schedule that the board approves.
My concern with December the 19th was it's the last Friday before Christmas, and I was concerned about quorum because that would be our budget meeting. We try not to schedule meetings that conflict with our councillors' other committee meetings. And I was hoping that Councillor Fletcher would still be here because December the 11th, which is the date that is obviously preferable, she has a committee meeting. And so I was hoping she had said she would be at this meeting, but she's clearly had to leave before we got to this item. So we can check with her if she's okay if we have it on the 11th, just because the 19th is, I'm concerned, maybe problematic. So can we just approve this as amended, or does anyone have any other questions as it relates to the schedule? Can we?
So what I would propose that we do is we confirm the move of the June date to the 23rd of June, confirm the move of the December 2025 board meeting to December 11th, subject to confirming with Councillor Fletcher that her obligation to attend another committee meeting that day does not form an obstacle for the board having the meeting on the 11th.
Perfect. Thank you. So can I have a motion to approve the schedule as amended? Vanita, Naram, thank you. Seconder, all in favor? Thank you. And Daryl, will you talk to Paula or?
Will.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So then we will move to item 11C, and we have two deputants. I will ask Mr. Avila to come forward first. And this is City Council directions requiring board attention.
Just to let you know, the second deputy is in the building, so I'll text him, let him know that he's coming up next.
Okay?
Right.
Mr. Ali, that's who you're referring to?
Okay, so item, is it on? Is it working? Good. Attention, list of things that need to be brought to attention of the board. Page 5, in the attachment, item PH 11.7, progress update on Toronto Community Housing Corporation's TCHC Tenant Advisory Committee. This item also will be part of discussion on the item 12B at the end of the agenda. So I will split my comments and try to focus on membership of the TAC. We attended, myself and the second deputy, a meeting where we share our discrepancies, our concerns about the recruitment, the way it was implemented, how it came about, that we come out with members that perhaps are finger appointed or they are friends of the corporation, we don't know. I tried to apply for the TAC, the Tenant Advisory Committee, and as I explained to Mayor Olivia Chow on Tuesday during the Executive Committee meeting, I explained what is wrong with the City Appointments Committee, because I have applied in the last 14 years position at this board, as an example. And Sean was in attendance when I said those things. And everybody's like, whoa, man, what's going on? So there's an issue that I have, and some people have also shared the same concern, is about a business relationship when tenants are vendors with TCHC. If you have in your composition tenants with that relationship, is a conflict of interest in our opinion, because they have to be independent. When you are attached to a paycheck or a contract, you will never be able to speak freely. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech is so important. You know, we want to have serious conversations about serious items. You know, like I discussed the issue of the absence of e-bike policy for TCHC residents. If I was a member of TAC, I would have put it as a priority, but apparently you were directed to discuss the code of conduct of TSC's tenant reps, which is one of the reasons I have a human rights complaint, because it's so controversial the way it all happened in 2 months, my dismissal, and they don't, and there are so many gaps in time. Anyway, I'm here to make some positive recommendations, because we want to have tenants engage and freely speak their mind. Because, you know, we want to provide constructive criticism, not just to put down the corporation. It's not, as I spoke to a city bureaucrat who said to me, Miguel, you need to tone down a little bit. You need to help them. Yes, I want to help them, but, you know, they want to also listen. They want to understand, you know, that the issues that I brought here are from my living experience as a tenant living with mental health and physical disabilities. So, in conclusion, I believe that having in the membership of TAC tenants with business relationship as vendors is a conflict of interest. And you should think about it, run it through the legal department. We can run through the legal department of the city. I can have a meeting with the city solicitor. We'll think that there is another alternative for that. And I hope you can recruit really bold members of the community to speak. As you can see, it's only 1, 2 of us, maybe 3 online. Great. That's it for me. I'll be right back with item 12B.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And I think the next deputant is Mr. Ali. I can't see for the poll. I don't know if there's nobody there? Okay, so can do. Oh, okay. Oh, he's. Do we?
Okay, he's coming. He's coming in. He's meeting with city officials.
Mr. Ali? Okay.
Sorry, my folks. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to debut today. My apologies, just doing an interview outside. But I wanted to speak, are we speaking to item 11?
11C, the City Council directions requiring board attention.
Amazing. So I wanted to, first of all, thank our TCHC staff for making those recommendations. I'm speaking on behalf of Neighborhood Pods TO, and we're actually in support of those recommendations. But the point that we wanted to raise is the importance of engaging with stakeholders, specifically our neighborhood associations, so members of FOSTRA, FONTRA. I belong to the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. We actually have an accessibility committee that was formed to address the accessibility needs of TCHC tenants. And we want to actually be proactive in future redevelopments of housing, whether it's in phases 4 and 5 in Regent Park, but across communities at the City of Toronto. So I'm asking the Board of Directors to engage with those stakeholders intentionally, invite those representatives from the various neighborhood associations across the City of Toronto that are invested in making sure that we address the accessibility needs of TCHC tenants. And most importantly, how do we track and monitor which buildings are truly accessible? There are various accommodation needs that we've heard from TCHC tenants, and I think it's critically important for the board and TCHC as an organization to be responsive, to list those buildings that are accessible and how they're accessible when future tenants are making applications to reside in a social housing unit, to speak to what accommodations that may be offered, and also have someone on your board or at least in your senior staff be responsible for the implementation of a strategy that actually promotes accessibility across Toronto community housing. So those are sort of the recommendations that we wanted to share. I did speak to the stakeholders in the letter that I submitted to Toronto Community Housing. So I want to thank Sonia and other folks who were able to share that correspondence with the rest of the board. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions as it relates to item number 11C? No? No. Thank you very much for your time and bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So can I have a motion to approve item 11C? Benita, thank you. Oh, receipt, sorry. Thanks, Benita. John, can you second? Thank you. All in favor? Pardon? It is approval. It is approval. I thought I was right. Motion to approve. Okay, John, seconder. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Item has been approved. So can we move on to item 11D? And we have, this is the Policy Management Framework update. And Ms. Birch is here to speak to the board. So, welcome.
Oh, here, it's okay. Good morning. Can you hear me all right? This report on page 2 of 5, bullet number 6, speaks to general update of document structure to improve readability. According to accessibility communication standards in the AODA and the IASR, the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation, it needs to meet a standard of plain language, and I'm requesting that this bullet be changed to reflect this standard and explicitly say plain language. In all of our policies, this seems to be an ongoing issue, and whether it's in policies, frameworks, documentation, and it doesn't apply just to stuff that is tenant facing, because we have people, that staff that have disabilities in various ways. So I need this corporation to hear me and hear me well. Get to the point where you accept the standard of plain language as a way of doing business. And that needs to start with policies and day-to-day communications. Next, I want to say that this report is not very clear between reviews and amendments and when policies come back to the board for approvals. If a policy doesn't have any changes, does it come back and get date stamped so that you can tell that it was reviewed? Or is it like it sits now? Sometimes this stuff has come back, they didn't date stamp it, so it actually looks like it sat for 10 years, and maybe it didn't because the date stamps didn't go in place. And it seems to be very bogged down and wordy and not clear as to what the process is in this framework. So I ask that it go back and be streamlined and more point blank as to what the process is. On page 8 of 12 of the actual framework, it says in the last bolded item, it says confronting anti-Black racism and equity and diversity lens. It should read confronting anti-Black racism, accessibility, equity, diversity, inclusion lens. You can't speak to EDI without speaking of accessibility. And it would be very wrong on the part of this corporation and this board to exclude it. Accessibility is a provincially legislated, it's got standards to it, and we need to do a better job of adhering to those standards and moving forward with those. And not just in the title, but throughout the content. So I'm asking that staff take it back in that particular segment and rewrite it to include accessibility, to remove the barriers as the legislation, that is the goal of the legislation, to remove barriers. And lastly, I'd like to take this off topic just for a minute. And I would like to personally say congratulations to Alan Murray for his retirement. I know his staff and his colleagues will miss him. Alan has been an exceptional executive and leader, his staff, and I have the utmost respect for the quality of leadership he gave us for a good number of years through some very trying times and various changes in leadership off and on, and that's tough to do. And yet through all of that, he with his FM team still delivered literally hundreds of millions of dollars of capital work, and that's to be commended. And so, Alan, if you're listening, I want to say thank you. and I wish you the healthiest and happiest of retirements. And Daisy, I've been working with you for a while, so congratulations on your interim position, and I know we'll keep doing some good work. In saying that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you. Ada?
Thank you, through the chair, and thank you, Kathy Birch, for your noted points on the framework and on the report. In response to each of those items, we have reviewed the document, and we will make the amendment to add the plain language review as part of the framework. We are very committed to ensuring that each of our policies are accessible from that perspective, and overall understanding and change management related to those policies. Plain language is critical, so thank you for raising that. On the item related to the approval process, also thank you for seeking the clarification in that area. I have connected with my colleague Dara to clarify the process. And when a policy that requires board approval does come up for review, it's going to be reported and named at the beginning of the year for the board's attention. And anything requiring board approval will be listed in this report at that time. Should tenants wish to dispute about the policy in question, they'll be able to do so at that time. The policies will then undergo a review process, and at the end, whether there are changes or updates or not, it will come back to the board for final approval. This will refresh the review date to the most current year, as you noted, and tenants again will have the opportunity to dispute once again at that step. Having said that, we are committed to having all tenant-facing policies be reviewed by the board, and also the engagement process is significant for each of those. So outside of this process, that is our intention. And then on the final item, in terms of adding the word accessibility into the confronting anti-black racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion lens line, we will make that amendment in the framework.
Perfect. It's just, it's really not clear in the body of this framework of where the approvals are coming in and where they're not. So I'd really like to see it in a way that you can actually understand it, even from an accessibility lens. Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments on item 11D? Okay, so we'll approve this as amended. You've gone through the 3 points, and as I understand it, that was what Ms. Birch was looking for. So can I have a motion to approve item 11D, Policy Management Framework Update, as amended? Brian, thank you. Vanita, seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Birch, for bringing it to our attention. So we will move on to item, yeah, you were the only deputy. Item 12B. And we have 2 deputations on this item. It's the Refreshed Tenant Engagement Systems and Implementation Plan. And I will ask Mr. Avila to come forward. And is Mr. Ali here? In the room? He's, okay. Oh, thank you, Dara. Okay.
All right, so this will be my last deputation of the day.
It's the last item on the agenda, Mr.
Last item on the agenda. Yeah, I'm closing it. I sent it off the field. Yeah.
Yeah, you're closing the place.
Yes. All right. Recommendations. I have 4 recommendations to make. In the community building groups, we lack the ability of taking notes, making preparations of agendas, facilitating an important topic. So I know it has always been the intention that the tenants are provided with capacity building. But as you know, in the real world, we don't have the funds to do that. However, thankfully to technology advancements made in the Zoom applications, we are now able to have artificial AI note takers, which it helps in many ways to record the minutes and have information to be shared with the members of the building committees. That will be an answer to that lack of capacity building, so that we are able to have the meetings, not to worry about who, she, or whatever is going to take the minutes. Before, we used to have community animators. They used to come to the building and make the notes for us. But due to the lack of skills, training, et cetera, we don't have that right now. So, and this is a citywide problem. So my advice to you is use technology. And we use it at Regent Park in our meetings, the AI technology. That frees us the time to, do all these annotations in writing. And we have an accurate context of the meetings. The recommendation I'd like to make for the Tenant Advisory Committee is that you have to provide with appeal mechanisms. So let's say that ex-resident has been removed out of his position as a tenant rep. You have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to respond back to the claims. So what you guys should do is establish an appeal mechanism so that we have an opportunity, tenants who have been dismissed, so that our case is heard, not just dump the evidence and not hearing the backstory. And I do have a human rights internal application complaint in that regards. And I have to reply back tomorrow. I requested clarification as to the timelines, how the TCHC staff determined that my dismissal was necessary in a very short period of time of 2 months. A lot of question marks. So anyway, I will submit my reconsideration application, because I still believe, that you need to hear both sides of the coin. Listen to one side is not going to cut it these days. This is a post-pandemic world, and we need to hear what's going on. My final recommendation, and I promised this to the 51 division officers, is that, I don't know if this over here is working today. Is anybody in the box? Hold my time, please. Okay, I don't know if we can see it. Right. So this is an audio remote noise system that maybe the 311 or community safety unit officers can be equipped with. You don't need to be in the floor to determine where is the noise source or what noise is happening at certain times of the day. When it comes to intermittent sounds, you need to either be there 8 hours, because what happens is that it happens every 30 minutes. In my neighborhood community officer says, Miguel, I wish I can stay in your unit, we can watch movies and hear what's going on. But this technology is remotely. You set up this device. It only costs $9,000, by the way, and it will deal with the human resources issue, that you don't have staff to be there, and when they come, it's only for 2 minutes, and they leave. I said, Miguel, I don't hear no noises. What are you talking about? So this will be a good alternative to audit noises in the buildings. And that concludes my deputation of the day.
Ali?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Walid Kogali Ali, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Neighborhood Pods DO regarding item 12B, the refreshed tenant engagement system and implementation plan. So I appreciate this opportunity to bring forward some critical concerns regarding equitable tenant representation in the Tenant Advisory Committee. So it wasn't not too long ago at the Planning and Housing Committee, I had an opportunity to depute with regards to this item. And one of the critical themes was equity and fair representation. So first and foremost, we believe the process for selecting tenant representation and representatives must be prioritize equity and fairness. Authentic tenant participation is essential to the mission of Toronto Community Housing Corporation to build vibrant, inclusive communities. However, when the landlord or its owner, the City of Toronto, can unilaterally appoint representatives, it risks undermining trust and diminishes tenant voices. To address this, we urge the adoption of democratic tenant election process, a tenant-led model, ensuring that the diverse voices and lived experiences within TCHC communities are generally reflected in decision-making spaces. This approach not only aligns with the equity principles, but also fosters trust and collaboration between tenants and TCHC. Our recommendation for tenant selection process also emphasizes the importance of a transparent and democratic election process, because we've heard from many TCHC tenants that they're not aware. They're not aware of how to get involved, how to be elected on tenants council, and who's representing them, and what are the issues that have been brought to the table. So there needs to be a model by which those representatives have an opportunity to respond to TCHC tenants. And that means exploring the communication tools and infrastructure that TCHC has to provide those report backs to tenants across the City of Toronto. The other piece that I want to quickly emphasize is one of the key challenges highlighted in the report was regarding attendance and membership changes. And I think it's important to note that a tenant-elected system ensures that representatives feel a stronger sense of responsibility to the communities they serve, and that those communities feel their voices are valued. We recognize the challenges faced by the current system, declining participation and frequent membership changes, and we welcome the reforms, but we want to ensure that by embedding democratic practices into the selection process, we address these issues while reinforcing the principles of the refreshed tenant engagement plan. We hope that this plan offers an opportunity to build trust, foster empowerment, and demonstrate TCHC's commitment to equitable engagement. Lastly, I just want to urge the board to take proactive steps to integrate a tenant-elected representation model into the refreshed tenant engagement system and implementation plan. Doing so will lay the foundation for a truly inclusive and equitable governance structure within TCHC. As a coalition committed to resident-led and community-focused initiatives, we stand ready to work alongside TCHC to design and implement this model. Together, we can ensure that tenant voices remain at the heart of the decisions that shape their lives and communities. And I want to thank you for your time and for considering this critical step towards equity and empowerment. And I'm happy to answer any questions or engage further in dialogue to support this initiative. Thank you.
Can I ask if there are any comments on item 12B? John?
Question of the deputant. Is it your assertion that they're not elected tenant representatives at TCHC?
That's an excellent question, my friend. What we have is a lot of appointments. We have a lot of lack of awareness amongst tenants that there's even an election process. So sometimes what happens is they feel completely disconnected with the process, not knowing who's their representative or what they've been discussing at the Tenants Council or other spaces. And what I'm imploring the board to do and consider is, as part of your plan, which I've read, by the way, in details, it's to be much more intentional to ensure that there's recruitment of residents so that there are elections.
So if I could just interject, I mean, I'm under the understanding, and I don't live in a TCHC building, but I'm under the understanding that staff makes multiple efforts of different types of outreach to advise tenants of tenant elections.
That's an excellent observation. The issue is that we have challenges with TCHC tenants who English is not their first language. So the communication forums used could be better utilized, whether it's in Tamil, Arabic, like the most common spoken languages, because a lot of those tenants actually have no clue. Like I've actually engaged with TCHC tenants, I've knocked on their doors, I've canvassed their buildings, I've asked them, do you know who your tenant representative is? And the answer is like, what are you talking about? So that's my point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments? Sorry, did you want to say something, Nadia? Yeah, sure.
So through the chair, I just wanted to say that much of the deputant's comments we are committed to in terms of equity and representation. Our current TAC process requires, it's co-administered by TCHC and the city. So it's an application process which includes an interview process. In terms of that switching to an elected process, we'd have to have that discussion with the city. Happy to do so. In terms of the new system, we are looking to have a more robust support mechanism around the election process. So we're actually going to be doing more elections, more outreach. And so the hope is in approving the document today, we're actually going to expand tenant representation. So that's the goal. So I think we have similar goals and happy to reach out to you directly to have conversations on how we do that.
Okay, and the board supports that. Vanita?
Through the chair, I just have a question for clarification in light of the deputant's comments. Can management comment related to the two TCHC tenant directors currently sitting on our board? Are they appointed not through an election process from their tenants or through the nominating panel, much like the other public members are?
All of our directors are, aside from city council members who have a slightly different process, all the members of the board who are directors are appointed through the Civic Appointments Office. The members of the public who are members of the board are appointed through one mechanism. There is a separate process through which tenant representatives or tenants who are of TCHC properties who want to be on the board undergo a separate appointment process that the city manages through that office. Okay.
Are there any other comments on 12B? Nadia, just my comment about bringing back to the board more information as it relates to LIFT before you actually launch the program.
And through the chair, happy to do so.
Okay. Brian?
Could you tell me what resources by region we are putting into each of these regions for tenant engagement? In the staffing that we have, are they attached to the region or are they central?
So through the chair, we have 3 regional teams under the community safety and support pillar. They're supported by 1 manager. In the east, we have 7 CSCs. In central, we have 6 CSCs. In west, we have 6 CSCs, so community service coordinators. We have a small centralized team of the tenant engagement refresh manager, a tenant participation coordinator, and a business planner, so a team of 3. We are looking to add an additional director to oversee the implementation of this program as well as the LIFT program. So we're really looking at a hybrid model between centralized supports and decentralized implementation. So that will continue to be the model going forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? So, excuse me, can I have a motion to approve the refresh tenant engagement system? Benita, thank you. Naram, seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And that was our last item on our public agenda. And so could I have a motion to terminate? Perfect. And we will get, excuse me, a 15-minute lunch break. So we're on schedule. Lunch has been provided. And I think there's drinks as well. And then we will start the second half of the in-camera session. And just for staff's benefit, the first item is just an in-camera with the board and Sean. And so you'll get an extra long lunch break, which is well-deserved. So thank you very much.